Director of Social Consciousness and a member of the Leadership Forum for Women's Clothing at Eileen Fisher in New York City. Amy supports the company's efforts to practice business as a movement. Amy collaborates internally and externally and to guide the company toward the, it's too dark up here, I can't read. To drive the company towards the ever-increasing human, environmental, and economic sustainability, including the fact that she co-leads the Vision 2020 for the Eileen Fisher Company. She also co-leads the company's people and culture area, together with leaders of the human resources, leadership, learning and development, and internal communication teams. Amy chairs the advisory board for the Social Accountability International and serves on the boards of Made By and the American Sustainable Business Council. In 2011, this is very interesting, Amy made a trip from New York to Washington, D.C. on her self-built bamboo bicycle as part of the Brita Climate Ride. So please welcome to the podium, we're all excited to hear Amy Hall.
Thank you, Jen. Good morning, everybody. Is my mic on? Yes, I can hear it. I can hear it. So thank you, Jana, for such a lovely introduction, and thank you, everybody, for welcoming me to Santa Fe. I have to admit, this is the largest audience I've ever spoken to, so if I trip and stumble, you'll know where it's coming from, my nerves. But I wanted to share with you today a little story about our company, Eileen Fisher, and how we are marching towards a better vision for our future and a better vision for the apparel industry. So before I start, I wanted to ask you just to kind of move your minds into this room and release your attachments to your professions, perhaps your schools, your studies, whatever it is that you do every day, and think of yourself purely as a consumer. And today is November 11th. I don't know how many of you realize that we're just a little over 2 weeks away from the unofficial first day of the holiday shopping season, Black Friday. So it's kind of an auspicious day to have this conference, I think, and this opening. And I want to have you put yourselves into the shoes of your holiday shopping habits and think about what it is that you're going to be buying for yourself, maybe to go celebrate, or for your friends and family as gifts. And just think about what are the things that you look for when you purchase a product. It could be clothing, it could be technology, electronics, toys, whatever. And think about what are the top 2 or 3 attributes you look for. Maybe it's price, maybe it's quality, maybe it's something about the values. And then what are the things that you would absolutely avoid if you had a choice about it? And then, continuing down that thought process, what would it take in the supply chain to have those attributes come true? And that's kind of where we are today. How do we ensure that we have a good price and build in all those important attributes, environmental sustainability, fair wages, ethical workplace, et cetera, in a way that we can afford as consumers and that make us feel good about how we're living? Oh, I have a clicker. Here we go. So, here we are. Now, I want you to jump back to 1984 and think about where you were then. And I'll just say, for me, I was recently graduated from college and entering the workforce. And at that time, pop culture was pretty big. So, there we go. Madonna was big on the pop charts, and this was a picture from Like a Virgin. And then punk rock was also really big, and I happened to have been a punk rock aficionado. I know it kind of doesn't fit. And Michael Jackson, that was the year he got caught his hair on fire in the Pepsi commercial. It was also a year Ronald Reagan was president, and I think unemployment was at about 8% versus around 5% today. So that takes you back to 1984. And then this is a picture of how I remember having to dress to go to my first job after college. And it was that struggle between wanting to look professional, wanting to look feminine, kind of drawing on a man's uniform, trying to figure out what to do around that neckline. I remember there were all kinds of creative solutions. And this is the scenario, the environment that Eileen Fisher found herself in and inspired her to create 4 simple shapes in 1984, 31 years ago. Now in that year, or at that time, sustainability, environmental sustainability, CSR, all those things, they hadn't been really coined. She founded the company, for those of you who aren't that familiar with our brand, with a commitment to to natural fibers, long-lasting pieces, and timeless design. So that was kind of the essence, the original foundation for what grew to be our commitment to sustainability. This is a photograph of an ad from 1994. So I'm already fast-forwarding a bit, and in that time span, we as a company tried a lot of different initiatives. We tried cotton grown in colors, fox fiber. We tried fleece made from recycled plastic water bottles. We introduced our first organic cotton yogurt tank a little after this in the early 2000s. We made a commitment to human rights in our supply chain by adopting SA 8000. We tried to do some interesting initiatives in our New York City factories to try to enhance the work climate for people there. And they were all kind of one-off initiatives all these many years. I've been with the company since 1993. And I would say that throughout this time frame, we tried a lot of individual projects. We did what we could, given kind of what we could afford. It hadn't quite, this initiative around environmental sustainability and human rights hadn't quite reached the level of broad company strategy. Some of you may know about our Green Eileen initiative. So around 5 years ago, Eileen has always been troubled by the amount of waste that we as a company generate, that we kind of encourage our customers to generate every time they purchase an outfit from us. So this was actually her idea, to start taking back the clothing that we sell. And we provide a small financial incentive for that, for customers. And so we take back previously worn clothing, and we started doing this about 5 years ago. We now have 2 standalone Green Eileen stores, one in Yonkers, New York, and one in Seattle. And we also carry this clothing, which we clean and we repair. And we sell it in some of our outlet stores, which we call our company stores. About 50% of that clothing is unsellable because it's ripped, it's stained, it's got moth holes. And so we actually teach classes on how to upcycle. Probably many people in this room could teach some of those classes, cutting the sweaters into blocks and sewing them back together in interesting designs to create baby clothes, or to felt them to make lampshades or rugs or whatever. So this was the poster that appeared in the store about 5 years ago. We'd like our clothes back now, thanks very much. Somebody saw the poster in the store and thought we were asking shoplifters to bring the clothes back. So it had a mixed message, but overall, I think it got the idea across. And then a few years after that, we introduced our ampersand campaign. So that symbol, that and symbol, we call it the ampersand. It tells our customers when there's an additional story to the clothing beyond the beautiful fit and feel of the fabric. In this case, it's Peruvian organic cotton, and I think it says also the fair trade sweater from Peru. Oh, I think these are oh no, I was thinking this was the jeans from the US, but it's a different ad. But anyway, this was the beginning of our telling our story publicly. So frankly, we've been working on these issues for over 20 years, and only about 5 years ago, we started really revving up the stories to the public. So 3 years ago, Eileen made her first supply chain tour ever, actually. And she visited California, where we do have some production, and she visited China, where a vast majority of our products are manufactured. And she came back quite stunned by what she now knew to be the state of the earth. She was very torn apart by the global water crisis and the fact that so many of the areas on this map, the red areas, represent places where we either manufacture clothes or we source fiber. And this is the current state of the world. Actually, this map is already a couple years old. And what distressed her was, if this is how it is now, how will the world look in 10 or 15 years? And what kinds of adjustments to our business will we need to make in order to continue what we call business as usual? So we think about, in the Western US, we have manufacturing facilities, and we also source organic cotton. In Southern Africa, we source trees for tencel. In South America, we source trees for viscose. In Australia, we source merino wool. In Mongolia, we source cashmere. In China, we make a lot of our clothes. So that red is very important to our company and the industry. So she came back from that trip and threw the gauntlet down and said, we are not doing enough, we're not going fast enough. We need to do more as a company, and even given the size of our company, we also need to impact the industry, because that's the only way we're going to have a fighting chance to change this picture. To put it in more, I think, severe terms, this is a picture of California and how it's changed. Its water environment has changed in just the past 5 years, starting with 2011 and progressing year by year to current day. It happens that fast. So if it happens that fast, we really need to get on the ball and think differently about how we're doing business. Does anybody have any idea what this is a picture of?
Is it that riverbed that's right up between California and Mexico?
So I think you said, is it the riverbed that dried up between California and Mexico? Perhaps. Anybody else want to throw an idea out? I don't know if that's the same. This is the Colorado riverbed. That could be the same one you're talking about, right? Oh, and you had your hand up, sorry. So, you know what? If our future is going to look like this, I think that we're pretty much in danger here. Now, I just want to read a quote by a conservation writer named Jonathan Waterman, and he said, "The Colorado River Delta is a testament of what happens when we ask too much of a limited resource. It disappears." So this is the state of affairs for us as a company and an industry. And then we look at this picture. It's obviously a picture of a forest that's been burned down. And for us, this means a lot, because a significant amount of our clothing is cellulosic, viscose or tencel. And about 70 million trees are logged every year for the production of cellulosic fiber. And of those 70 million trees, 70% of the trees are actually wasted in the production of the pulp. So it's a huge, huge tragedy. And about, what's the percentage? About 30% of rayon and viscose in the world comes from ancient and endangered trees, particularly in Canada and Brazil and Indonesia. And then, of course, there's the waste. So we hear the statistic, 13 million tons of textile waste are produced by the US every year. 15% of that is recycled, and the rest goes into landfill. That's about 11 million tons of waste, of textile waste in our landfill. So we have our Green Eileen initiative. That's something, but it's certainly not, it's a drop in the bucket. And so what this brings to mind for me is, how much clothing do we really need as consumers and as individuals? And it's particularly important as we think about going into the holiday season right now, and what are we thinking of giving, what are we thinking of buying? And of course, textile waste includes other things besides clothing: household goods, automobile seats, sheets and blankets, that kind of thing. So, here's where technology comes into play. Probably many of you in the room have seen the True Cost. Yes? A lot, a fair number. I just wanted to show the trailer today. For those who haven't seen it, this came out over the summer. It's the first full-length documentary of its type that helps us really understand the depth of the impact that we have when we leave things unattended, and in this case, the movie and the trailer really focus on Rana Plaza, but it has a message that's important to all of us. It's 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 important to all. I highly recommend you download it from Netflix. We have, as a company, hosted a number of screenings of this film and discussion panels with Andrew Morgan, the director. So it's quite impactful, and it's a great tool also for schools. So perhaps you can use it in your classes. This is Eileen Fisher by the numbers, and the reason I show this is to kind of, show how relatively compact and small our supply chain is, but also to drive home the idea that every single, it's all squished up. Every single individual in our supply chain, the 10,000 plus workers, the number of traders and farmers, all the employees, the wholesale customers, the retail customers, we really do care about every single individual. And even given its relatively small size compared to much larger companies than we are, this is a huge challenge to truly reflect that sense of compassion that we have through our actions and through the way we produce and place orders with our supply chain. So where all of this has rolled up to is what we now call Vision 2020. And this was first publicized earlier this year. So we sort of grew over the years. We had that ampersand campaign, which is now still visible on our website, but now we have a Vision 2020 link on our website. And this really drives home the idea that there is something better out there that we can all be doing as apparel brands and retailers. This is, I know. I was trying to remember what I was going to do in this slide. I have a prop. It's a rubber band. And we hired a consultant a couple years ago to help us move this vision along and to come up with strategies. And something that she loves to do, her name is Sarah Schley. She's fabulous. She takes a rubber band and she stretches it like this. And this is all we need to do to remind ourselves the vision is up here at the top, and where we are in reality is right here at the bottom. And that tension in between it represents kind of the reality of trying to get this work done. How much work it's really going to take, how much negotiation, how much compromise, how much persistence and patience. And we can slowly try to get closer to our vision, but then our vision is always going to move along too and get bigger. So I like to think of that rubber band as representation of Vision 2020. So Sarah Schley came in, and her background is in system mapping and sustainability. And she said, let's get the system in the room, and we're going to talk about how we're going to create goals around something that we later called Vision 2020. And we said, what do you mean by getting the system in the room? And she said, well, where is the one system, the most important system in your company that has to do with your biggest impact? And so we said, well, our biggest impact is our product. So let's get the product system in the room. And we identified about 22 people from leaders, decision makers in our design team, merchandising, product development, manufacturing, social consciousness, and Eileen. We took everybody off-site for 3.5 days. And Sarah had us sitting in nature and journaling. She had us doing individual visioning, team visioning, company visioning. We didn't know what was going to come out of it. We didn't go in with any preconceived ideas. And in the end, we all held hands and we agreed that we had to set very ambitious goals for the company, and that no longer did that responsibility just live in the social consciousness team, but we needed to take ownership across the company. So we created these teams that are on this visual. They're not functional teams. They're representative of these sort of cross-functional groups of people who now own this work. We have, let's see if this pointer can, I don't know. Well, anyway, I have a pointer. Did I do it? Ah, there it is. I got it. So design for sustainability is pretty much what you hear, right? It has to do with our how our product, what the fibers are, the chemistry that goes into them, how we're thinking about waste, eliminating waste in the design process. Manufacturing for sustainability has to do with the people in their supply chains, costing, efficiencies, all of that. We have customer engagement. This is the newest group that we formed. This has to do with how do we get our customer interested in these values. Believe it or not, most of our customers, they appreciate that we stand for these values, but they're not really engaged in them, and we really want to move them into a place of engagement. We have the before and next life, which is closing the loop on our products, so taking that green Eileen collected clothing and finding ways to maybe perhaps turn that 50% of unusable clothing back into usable fiber, so that would be closing the loop. And the top one, supply chain system strategy, we're now calling supply chain excellence, is, in my opinion, the most interesting of the 5 groups because it ties everything together. And it basically says, we're not going to have any success until we actually turn the mirror on ourselves and look at how we are moving decisions along between the design team and our supply chain, and all the implications of every single change, every single reorder, every single change in quantity, new color we add, a reorder that may require the factory to pull the markers out again and start from scratch. There's a lot of inefficiency built into that, a lot of timing issues, a lot of stress, and that's what we're calling supply chain system strategy or supply chain excellence. So how do we know we're getting anywhere? We have created a whole set of goals for ourselves. We call them the riverbanks. That's not really important. What is important to know is we have 4 big buckets in the environment, for the environment, and 4 big buckets for the social side. And in the environment side, we like to think of it as what goes into our product and what comes out through the making of the product. So what goes in is the materials. We have goals around 100% organic cotton, 100% organic linen, 0 viscose, and many, many other goals around our products by the year 2020 and beyond. In the chemistry side, it's all about using the safest chemistry possible in our products and processes. Carbon, we want to achieve carbon neutrality. We want to improve our energy efficiency all around, not just for our own facilities, but in our supply chain. And water is the one that we're still building up a set of goals around. We know we need to create goals around water consumption as well as water quality, cleanliness, in all the ways that we use water in our supply chain. It's interesting that a lot of the words are getting cut off, but anyway, I did double check this. On the social side, there are 3 riverbanks that have to do with the supply chain. Fair wages and benefits, that's supposed to say. Workers and community happiness, is that's supposed to say. The key word is actually missing. And the other one on the bottom left is workers' voice. So those are all how the supply chain, the people in the supply chain are experiencing their lives in their workplace. Conscious business practices, that's supposed to say, is really that piece about what are we doing on our end to engender greater trust with the suppliers. So we don't know of any other company that's actually building a goal around their own practices with regard to the supply chain. Because until we figure that out, we don't actually think the rest is going to be able to be possible. It won't be possible. I'm going to show you another visual. I think it's the next one. Oh, good. This is a crazy one here. I'm going to go on this side. So I mentioned that this consultant, Sarah Schley, taught us system mapping. This is an example of a system map. It's quite hard to read. Can I go off the podium? Is that going to be okay? To the camera person? Okay. So this is an example of a system map. I don't expect you to understand all the details, but I just want to point out a couple things. So this pink up here is the design, represents the design processes. The orange represents the sales and commits processes. The green represents the supply chain on the outside of the company. And what this shows is every time we have a complicated style, or here it says trim management or extractions, frequent design changes, every time something like that happens, it has an unintended consequence. There's an impact on consistency of workflow, timely delivery to the warehouse, selling time on the floor, confidence in the line, accuracy in projections, and then the chase. And then it starts all over again. And every time any of that happens, there's an impact on the efficiency of the factory, the overtime, the worker satisfaction, the worker turnover, fair wages and benefits, worker voice, all of this. And out of this map, we've been able to, this is how we came up with those social riverbanks: worker satisfaction, worker voice, fair wages and benefits, and up here, conscious business practices, because that's what all of this represents. So using system mapping, we've been able to look for the key leverage points, those leverage points where we're going to have the biggest impact, and the end intention is on our supply chain. All these years, we've been hanging the code of conduct in the factory, sending the auditors in, going back 6 months later, checking again, maybe having some training, maybe checking in, doing some kind of management consulting with them. And year after year, the audits kept coming back basically the same. And then we realized, no wonder, because we can't expect them to make these changes until we actually make it possible for them. We need to pull back on the timeline. We need to stop imposing all of these reorders and this redoing and changes and everything, and expect them to deliver everything on the same original deadline. So, oh my goodness. Sorry about that. Here we go. Anyway, so that's an example of a system map, and what we're doing, we have a number of these maps for all kinds of processes inside the company, and this is just one example. So this is a fall ad, fall 15, and this is where we've decided to tackle slightly, in the Eileen Fisher kind of subtle way, the idea of consumerism, and really saying to our customer, you really only need to buy what you love, right? Buy the pieces that are right for you. And I think Yuki, who's in the audience, I know you didn't want me to call you out probably, but she'd be the first one to say that we will talk people out of a purchase if it's not the right thing for them, right? Yeah. And in the end, so this is a copy of the ad that went out in the very beginning of this year, but I thought it was a fitting way to wrap up this trajectory, because what this talks about is that we have to look at every thread, every life, every piece of fabric that goes through our system, and that it's no longer good enough. Doing less bad is no longer good enough. We have to think, put ourselves into a new future, envision a new future for this, for the apparel industry. And Eileen has said herself, it's not just about us. It's not about getting a competitive edge over our sister brands out there. It's really about universal acceptance of this new way of thinking. So I go back to this t-shirt, the customer idea, because in the end, we still need to be able to have a viable brand. When we think of sustainability, it can't just be environmental and social, it has to be economic as well. So if you look at this picture, and we've got the Eileen Fisher organic t-shirt on the left, organic cotton t-shirt on the left, and another brand, unnamed, on the right. How do we get our customer to want to buy the one on the left? Because of the values that are wrapped into it. And so that we can continue to press forward with all of this work. And I think that's true for any brand that wants to step into this space. How do we get the customers to care? So that brings us back to today. And I wonder, for each of you in the audience, if you can think of one action, one single conversation that you might have after you leave the conference, or maybe while you're at the conference, that can help you step even further into this new vision for really the apparel industry of the future. What is it that you can do, say, have influence over that might propel somebody else to think differently? Where is that light bulb moment going to be for your next relationship or business partnership. Oh, and that's it. That's me.